Hello and welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy that you are here with us. I was just telling Dr. White that it was a beautiful day here in northern Alabama where I am. And he said it was a nice day in California, which it's always a nice day in California, right?
Absolutely. Just a little windy.
Just a little windy, just a little windy. But we are happy that you are here with us and have joined us today live. And if you saw if you saw on Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube, we are taking your questions today on marriage. That means you are helping us do the program today. Like we need your questions to answer. So please put in the chat questions that you may have about marriage or relationships. And we are going to do our very best to give you the best response that we can give. Just to remind you that we're not your mental health professionals, but we can provide education on this platform. And if you want to know how to stay connected to Living Manna Church or even know more about Mental Health Mondays, if we have announcements, please sign up to get the text. And I think Dr. White is able to put that up. There it is. Yes. You can text, and it's right there across your screen, 8457, or I'm sorry, text LMOC to 84576. And that's how you can sign up to get information from Living Manna Church, even Mental Health Mondays. If we want to provide information to you, we can do it in that way. So please sign up for that. And let us know, please, where you are watching from. I see someone, Crystal. Hi, Crystal, is watching from Spokane, Washington. So welcome. We are happy that you are here with us this evening. Please put in the chat where you are viewing from, and you can also add your questions to the chat as well. So again, we know where Crystal's watching from, but there's many other people on here that haven't put where they're watching from. Okay.
Absolutely. If you know somebody that's in a relationship and you think they may have some questions or what have you, please make sure that you encourage them to come on the show, or even you may ask their question for them. But
yes.
Let's get those questions.
Yes, you sure can.
Yeah, Chris from Zimbabwe. We've got Joanne.
Wow. All right. Hi, Chris. It's either the middle of the night or very early morning, I'm assuming, where you are. Tell us what time it is where you are. But thank you for watching us either early in the morning or very, very late at night.
Hey, yes, Clint from Longview, Texas. Clint
yes.
is
Clint is a regular.
He's a regular. We really appreciate our regulars. We appreciate new people. But yeah, definitely good to see you again, Clint.
And Morna from Dallas, Texas.
Nice. Tavares from Florida.
The Trinidad and Tobago. Did you already say that and I missed it?
Well, I didn't say that one.
You get a second welcome from Trinidad and Tobago. Also, Tavares from Florida. I probably said that wrong, so I'm sorry if I did.
Usually Sharon? We have someone from California, but we're waiting. I see Sharon from Mississippi.
Yes. What part of Mississippi, Sharon? My dad was born in Aberdeen, Mississippi. So I just always ask people. That's near Tupelo, near Memphis.
3:05 a.m., I guess, in Zimbabwe. Was it Zimbabwe?
Wow. Well, God bless you, Chris, for being up that early watching us.
Seriously, yeah.
Thank you. We have Janice from Belize. So welcome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Welcome.
And then Yanette from Rowlett, Texas. Definitely want to visit Belize at some point. That'd be really fun.
Okay. Yeah. I told you before, my family's from Roatan, which is right next to it's on the coast of Honduras. It is Honduras, but it's right next to Belize. So I've been there before. Once.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's nice. Okay, Sharon. So you're about 3 hours from Tupelo, Mississippi. Okay. I've been to Tupelo once. Matter of fact, I just got a text today that there's a family reunion down there during the summer, but I won't be able to go because we'll be out of the country. But
oh no.
Yeah.
Well, just to get things, going while they
Yes.
load up the chat with some questions.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of broken picker syndrome?
Broken
Broken picker.
picker syndrome.
So,
Until Dr. White explained it to me what he was talking about, I hadn't heard it in that way, but I
well,
understood the principle. But go ahead.
yeah, well, it's a term that I've coined, but what you'll see sometimes is you'll see people who get into the habit of picking someone who is not the best idea for them.
Right.
And you'll see it over, like they end the relationship with that person and they tell you, man, it was so stormy, it was so unfortunate, I was neglected, I was abused maybe. And then they get into another relationship like that, and they get
Mhm.
out and then they get into another one. And so we talk about, and so it's where I've coined that term, broken picker. It's like the thing that you're supposed to use to pick a person that would be
Right.
good for you is broken.
Yes.
And
Really quick before you continue, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, we have to say you said there was nobody from California, somebody from Oakland, California.
there it is,
There it
Rose.
is.
Thank you.
Rose, welcome.
About time. That's right. We love people
Yes.
from home
Eh,
state.
Yes, welcome. And I'm using this time just to say, please share on your social media platform that you are viewing from to your friends, family. Send the link because we're taking marriage questions, and we know that in America that 50% or 50% of marriages end up in divorce. So that means there should be a lot of marriage questions out there. Just that you're able to ask two mental health professionals. So please share on your Instagram story, say, hey, this is live now. Or if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, share the link. All right, Dr. White,
Exactly.
continue.
Well, right. So so the idea just being, so you develop this pattern of choosing making choices that actually cause you quite a bit of problem. And so it's this idea that your picker is broken, but how did it get broken? And
Mhm.
the idea is like, I think it was Clint that was kind of hinting at it, where he's like comfortable in misery. And so, how do you develop comfort in misery? And sometimes it's, past trauma that you've been exposed to. And what can happen is that you can develop muscles. You can develop some comfort with actually dealing with those kinds of issues, and you can start to become skilled at dealing with that issue and preferring to deal with circumstances with that issue.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's an issue of actually lacking value of self, so that when this person is treating you like you don't have any value, it's congruent with what
Right.
you believe about yourself.
Right.
So you're like, yeah, well, that makes sense that you're treating me like this. And then the person who's actually wanting to treat you appropriately, you find that boring, or you
Mm.
find that, that can't be right. There must be
Right.
something wrong with you to be seeing something right in me.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
you end up putting, people who might be high value into the friend zone, so to speak. And then, people who don't mean as well for you, those are the people that you're pursuing. And I call it broken picker syndrome. And the
Yes.
solution is, you got to fix the picker. You
Mhm.
got to get it
Mhm.
fixed. And that's the role of intention, time with yourself. Obviously there's some spiritual time with that, but then of
Right.
course there's therapy and getting professional help and getting that picker fixed, learning some new adaptations that, what, I do have value, and I'm
Right.
going to honor the people that honor me. We
Mhm.
have our first question, and it's coming from none other than
Yes.
Crystal Cox.
Yes.
So Crystal said, how do you manage blended families with children from the husband's previous marriage, the wife's previous marriage, and they now have a child together? How do you manage blended families? Go for it, sis.
Yes, I do want to go for that one. I mean, first of all, blended families, I mean, can be a really rich blessing, but they could also be a challenge as well. And I think a lot of times, I mean, first of all, everybody's blended family is different. So if not even if, but when the children have a relationship with their own mother or father, and you are the bonus mom or dad, you definitely want to go into that relationship as just a bonus, not trying to replace their mom or dad, not trying to make them call you mom or dad, but I like to tell my clients, but to be that really cool auntie or someone like that, as you're entering into that relationship with those children, especially it depends on the age, really. Like, especially if you're dealing with teenagers, or even young adults. Like, you just want to be that cool auntie or friend, like that space, until they're able to build their own relationship with you. I think a lot of mistakes that people make is they try to go into the relationship with their partner and try to act like they are also their father or also their mother. Like, it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen like that. Sometimes that relationship grows into that, but it takes time. So that's not an immediate thing that can happen. Would you like to share something about that?
No, that was really good. As a family systems expert, sis, maybe you could talk about some of the systematic things that you want to put in really any relationship, but especially when you're dealing with complicated dynamics like a blended family, it would seem like those systems become even more important. So, what are some of the things that you probably encourage your clients to say, hey, you really want these kind of things in place in order to support a thriving family relationship?
That was number one. What I just mentioned is number one when you're entering into a relationship that has children, is kind of almost to stay in your lane or know your role. That is so very important, and just give the family time to blend together. And I don't know what you're meaning specifically, like what
Like
type of
family
systems.
dinners, like
Oh,
family
yes,
dinners, like
yes.
the date nights, like being
Oh, for the
intentional.
marriage. You mean for the
Right.
marriage. Okay, I'm thinking
Mhm.
you're talking about the whole family. So for the marriage, yeah, this is with anyone, not just blended, but um you're talking about just for the couple and how they can make sure that their relationship stays strong, is um having date nights, 2-hour date nights once a week. That's very important for the couples to be able to have time just for themselves, um, it doesn't include children or kids. And sometimes that's very challenging because when your children are young, that's very challenging. But I have known couples to do things at different times. Like some couples, their work schedule worked where they could do something in the morning together after their kids go off to school and they don't have to be to work yet, and they spend that special time together. Just 2 hours that you can reconnect with your spouse every week that doesn't involve children. That's very important, and I can go even deeper into that. But
Right. But the idea is being putting intention.
right,
Um, you
you
know,
set
like
that time aside. It's in the calendar. It's that time is sacred. That time is
absolutely.
sacred.
Absolutely, because what you'll find is when a situation is more challenging, it requires a bit more rigor, and
Right.
with that increased rigor, you'd be surprised to see now you guys need to be on the same page. So,
Yeah.
like Sister Tante mentioned that you need to like stay in your lane. Well,
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, you're going to need clarity on what that means
Yes.
and how that might shift. And that's why that communication becomes so key so that you can make the adjustments that you need to. Because I have in my mind almost like if people are like going down rapids, well, you have to be really communicative if you're going down rapids in those boats because it's such of a changing, environment. So you got to be
Mm-hmm.
communicating constantly.
Yes.
And in a situation with blended families and the numerous dynamics, understanding where everyone is, how are they feeling, like you've got to keep the communication channels very clear.
And
And so,
communication, yeah, communication's in huge in any marriage, in every marriage, but
right,
when it comes to blended families, it's it's even
Paramount.
yeah, it's paramount. It's paramount. Everybody has to have that safe space where they feel like they can communicate and be honest about their feelings. And again, just to feel very, very safe to be able to share what they need to share. This is the other thing, and sometimes this is not always possible. But if you're entering into a blended family or in a relationship where there it is a blended family, having a strong relationship as much as possible with the children's other parent, this is not always possible. I know. Sometimes it's just not possible. But if it is possible, to be able to have that strong relationship with them will benefit your marriage and it will benefit the children. And because these children um, are in your care for half the time or however the agreement is, it's going to help you not to be as stressed out because these children are going to be as healthy as they can be being in a blended family. So that takes a lot of maturity. It does, but it's so very important, and it will
And a
be
lot
good
of
for your
and a lot of
marriage.
and a lot of collaboration, so
Yeah,
where possible, where
where
possible,
possible. It, it's
you can't say it enough that sometimes that's not
it's
possible, and
not
sometimes
possible.
it's not even advised because you can't co-sign what that other person is doing. But the
No,
idea being, when you guys can get organized
right,
and the children can experience that you're organized, you guys are on the same page, they can't split you, they can't exploit
right.
you, they're getting a consistent message. These are things that are going to support child rearing, as complicated as that is.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
those are some really important things. And
Yes.
I would say you're trying to create settings where people feel heard. Like
Yeah.
that's an important requirement for
Mm-hmm.
safety and growth. So
Yeah. And I think, and I just want to remind everybody that we're taking your questions. We're answering your questions about marriage and relationships on this program for Mental Health Mondays. But I want to say also on that, oh, it just left my mind a little bit. But um, okay, I'll say another
about
thing.
being heard, about feeling heard.
Well, feeling heard and that safe space, but yeah,
Boundary
it
setting.
just it
No,
just slipped. But I do want to
come on.
say, while people are coming up with their other questions, I want to say an example of what I was thinking about is, and it's actually this is from a couple that we wouldn't think that we're going to get this example from, but Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, and they are in a blended family because Will was married before and he has an older son, and so Jada has talked about on Red Table Talk, and she has his ex-wife on there. Like, I've seen her on there several times. They're actually friends. They were not always friends. They used to be like, not liking each other because Jada was the new wife and she was the stepmom to her son. But they grew out of that and became mature enough to actually form a relationship. And their relationship is very close. And Jada has an incredible relationship with the son that Will Smith and his ex-wife share. And it just took a lot of maturity, and the children have a very close relationship to both parents, and there just wasn't those issues that you see. And I just, even though I know this is not a perfect couple in every way, but in that aspect, they really did very well. They did very well.
Very, very good. Very, very good. Um, so I did see some questions.
Let's see.
And one question was, let's see.
I think this is a good one.
Yeah. In a marriage, is it okay to have or continue to have a best friend of the opposite sex? A best friend of the opposite sex.
Your
You
best
know,
friend is your spouse.
yeah, tell me about it. Tell me.
Period.
In a marriage, is it okay to have and continue having a best friend of the opposite sex as your? Oh my goodness, man! You
I
just
yeah, wow. Yeah. I mean as a marriage and family therapist, but then just as a yeah, just being married
yeah,
25 years.
your best friend is your spouse. I
Your
mean,
best
that's
friend definitely is your spouse. And I would say I would say no. It's not the wisest thing to do. But not everybody's different, but spending that much time with the opposite. I mean, if this is your best friend, you're spending a lot of time. You're talking all the time. You're texting this and that. No, it's not the best thing. It's not.
It's not the best thing either.
Um, you know,
You're
I know.
asking for trouble.
Yeah, yeah, you are asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. You're
Um,
asking for trouble.
Obviously, there's like what is it, 8 billion people on the planet at this point, and
Yeah,
so those 8 billion people combine into all these incredible situations that are beyond the scope of our discussion right now. There's all these different possibilities,
right.
but the bottom line being, we're talking to you in terms of probability, and in terms of probability, you realize there's a 50% failure rate for marriage. You realize that, like, this is not 100%, 99%, like, so then you're really trying to position yourself for success.
Right.
And what you're thinking is, okay, the resources that I have, my time, my energy, my blah blah blah, remember the marriage vow, forsaking all others.
Right.
Remember the vow,
Mm-hmm.
forsaking all others.
And I
And
want. Mm-hmm. Go
and,
ahead.
and you don't get married in private for most people either. So the community knows
Mm-hmm.
that that's the vow, that that's the commitment. So anyone that you say, hey, I'm gonna have to prioritize my relationship, and anybody would have to understand that, no, that's the vow. So there's no way I can be your best friend, so to speak. No, your spouse is your best friend. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your spouse is your
Yeah.
best friend. I'll echo that.
Yeah. For sure. For
Now,
sure.
why did you
I don't
ask the
know. I would
question?
feel a certain kind of way if I were said some other woman was his best friend. I would definitely feel a certain kind of way.
I think
That's just
I think that
honest.
was I think that was the understatement of 2023.
That's just honest.
Right.
I wouldn't feel okay with that. Um, not to say that he can't have friends. You can have, friends, but
Yes.
best
But
friend?
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
not the best friend. No,
not best
that's not
friend.
gonna happen. All
There
right,
is there is a steep one here. Well, I'm gonna let you take this one.
go ahead. What is the Bible stance on divorce and remarrying? On
Since
divorce.
you're an elder, you're still an elder.
Thank you for that.
I gave you that one.
Thank you for that, sister. Well, so first and foremost, as according to the Bible, Jesus was asked. I think they asked Jesus about marriage and divorce, and he said the one reason to divorce was for adultery. That's what he said, and I'm familiar with the Seventh-day Adventist position, or it might even be Ellen White,
Mhm.
who said that, look, if you divorce for any reason other than adultery, then you should stay divorced and you shouldn't remarry. That is my understanding of what is said. Is that what you've
Mhm.
heard?
That is what.
This
Yes,
this one
that is what
this
I've
one
heard.
we need Ivor for, but yeah, um,
We don't.
but
That is what I have. I
that's what I've
grew up.
heard.
That's what I grew up,
Yeah.
or that's what I've heard. Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so that's the answer to the question. That's what I've heard. That's what I understand is Adventist doctrine. But
I don't know if I'd call it doctrine.
you're right, like that, like that's
No.
the position I've heard in Adventist circles. But
Right.
I mean, you can always explore it in greater detail with your pastor.
Yeah, you
um
can. And also, I just want to add on to that the Bible um, says that God has given us the God has given us the right, I guess, to divorce if it's for adultery. Um, if we're not able to forgive, but it's it's just such a tough topic. It's just such a tough topic because um there's abuse, there's physical abuse, and maybe
oh
this
yeah.
so there's physical abuse. So no one can stay in a relationship if there's physical abuse, and then there's emotional abuse that is mentally just as bad as physical abuse because it destroys a person. I don't believe God is calling us to stay, and I know God's not calling us to stay in physical
Right.
and abusive relationships. Um,
Yeah, because I've never
It,
heard the advocacy of. I don't want to interrupt you. Please keep
no, go
going.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, because the stance is not as strong as stay in it. It's no, like no. There are times to end it. It's just I've heard more language about okay, but then don't jump back into it. Let's say, and
Or
you
you mean
that
to remarry?
to remarry outside of the context of adultery, like that. That's what I've heard.
Right, but a lot of times that spouse, I mean, once you get out of it because there was abuse, that spouse that you left will
Yes.
remarry,
At
and
which time, theoretically,
it,
you're free. You're free to roam about
exactly,
the country.
exactly. So yeah,
So yeah, so I mean, I hope that was helpful, Yeneka, and let us know if that helped you.
hmm
Let's see. I saw some others.
yeah.
If you remarry, is it adultery? If you remarry, is it adultery? If you remarry, is it adultery? What's your definition of adultery, Vol? you know?
Right,
Um,
because you're no longer married.
right,
You're no longer married, so you're not cheating. Because you're no longer married, you got a divorce.
right. Yeah, they're getting all theological.
They are. Well,
we,
I think
we,
because these are Christians who want
right,
to know what uh God is, what he says about this, and or what how
right.
he yeah. And I think I don't want to say there is a general principle, but within that principle, there still are different situations that I think um, God has to judge individually
Okay, yeah,
within the general principle.
right, right. So yeah, so we would need the scriptures. Um,
And I don't know the scriptures right off the
exactly. I
top of
don't know
my
the,
head.
the scriptures off the top of my head. But the general premise, the general premise that I can identify with from a mental health standpoint is, I think sometimes people jump back into the relationship or forming a relationship without having given themselves time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that I think maybe that pause is really about, hey, give yourself some time to heal. That's my estimate, or my um, those are just my thoughts and my perspective.
Right.
Okay, so David Edwards said, and I say to you, whoever divorces his wife
Yeah,
except
that's the
for
text.
immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. Here, the phrase "and marries another" raises the issue of remarriage. Jesus states that divorcing a mate on the grounds of immorality frees the offended mate to remarry without committing adultery. And he didn't say the text. That's the only thing. But
Um,
then Ross Brower is saying
he
maybe
put First
Mark 10,
Corinthians
11.
7:39, or
Yeah.
there's two
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
Um,
And then Matthew chapter 5, verse 32. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. 1 Corinthians 7, chapter 39. So yeah, you guys can look at the biblical references for that. Okay, let me
yes.
see. All right.
And as
Yeah.
we're going through that, please put other questions in the chat that you
Yeah,
may want us to
absolutely.
answer about
Absolutely.
relationships and marriage.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, we can.
definitely, if you're not a member of Living Managed Church and Pastor Myers is not your pastor, you can also take these questions deeper with your pastor as well, and do your own study and research too,
Absolutely.
because there's different thoughts
Um,
about definitions of what um, of what can be considered adultery, like, and again using really going back to emotional abuse and physical abuse. um, God doesn't, your spouse may not have cheated with you with another person, but these are not situations that he requires you to stay in.
right.
um,
Right.
and so we just really want to emphasize that, because there are people there are people who take everything so literal that they think that if they really have a relationship with God and they don't want to do anything that is going against God, and so they may stay in an abusive relationship because they think God will be angry with them. And I don't believe that that is the case.
No, that is correct. Well, the funny thing is, even if you're confused as to divorcing, you can
Mhm.
separate,
Right.
and still get yourself out of that situation.
That's
Even if you're
true.
like, well, we can't divorce. Well, you can certainly,
Right.
it's not like a condemned separating. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's like God really prioritizes safety.
Right. Of
That's a
course.
big deal. And so that's why we can't give you advice specific to a situation that we know nothing about.
Right.
So that's why you can't take this to the bank. I'm leaving. No, it's you
They
really
told me
need.
on Mental Health Mondays I can leave.
Yeah, that we're talking about
No.
general principles here.
Right.
Um, yeah. So yeah. Since they didn't put any more questions,
Yes,
uh,
but while I was talking about relationships, people did have comments about your picker uh,
syndrome.
syndrome, right? And I'm going back up to see that now. Uh, well, maybe it was just comments.
The picker is broken because maybe they didn't have father figure in their lives, and they are looking for love in all the wrong places and wrong men. Um,
Definitely, we call that daddy issues. Well, that's the
yeah,
common term. Is people who have
right.
daddy issues or didn't have the father in their life definitely will gravitate to any man just because they're trying to fill that void, that
Yeah. And
that hole that's there because their father wasn't there. Go ahead.
now, for those of us who have daughters, this is why it's so important to be loving, be gentle, be tender, be attentive, and really model what you're hoping your daughter is going to choose one day. And that's why it's so if we are pathology to our children, then they're going to choose pathology,
Mhm.
raging at them, being abusive, and being not listening to them and hearing them. They won't have that model then, embedded meaningfully into their mind, as far as, hey, what should what should I experience? So that's why it's so important to really try to represent, as much health, as much health as possible, and give them that experience of being valued. That said, I do want that qualifier that you could have had a perfect, paternal relationship with your dad, and you can still make mistakes.
Mhm. Oh
You can
yeah.
still make mistakes because of the nature of dating. And
Mhm.
something that people don't pay attention to is, sex is addictive. Okay,
Mhm.
it is designed. It actually stimulates the reward centers, um, that drugs, for example, stimulate.
Right.
So of course, you know that there's increased dopamine at the level of the nucleus accumbens, when people experience sexual activity. And what's interesting about that is, so when you're engaging in sex with a person, it's like you are addicting yourself to that person. One of the other neuro chemicals that's released is also called oxytocin, and
Mhm.
oxytocin supports trust. So here you are addicting yourself to this person, and also chemically attuning yourself to trust the person. These are the things that
Mhm.
happen when you engage in, sexual activity. So that's why you see scripture recommending that you place this activity in the context of a marital
Marriage.
relationship,
That's right.
so that now here you vetted the person, here you spent some time understanding who they are, what
Mhm.
they're about. They have now stepped forward and made a commitment to you, a public declaration. And it's in that context that you engage in sexual activity, where now you're addicting yourself to that person, and you're trusting that person more and more. And you can see that that works a lot better than addicting yourself to a person randomly. Now, people are going to say,
Mhm.
you don't get addicted to everybody." Of course, I get what you're saying. But the idea just being, I think many of us have observed relationships where you're like, why are you still with that person?
Mm-hmm.
And that person themselves, they're saying, I don't want to be with them. I want to stop this, but I just feel
Mm-hmm.
bound to them. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you trusting that person? Why don't you see how many times they've lied to you? And I'm just alerting you to the fact that your neurochemistry is sort of supporting your trust. It's supporting your tendency to be bound to them. So I want you to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a question.
We have,
What
yeah, we have a big one.
what if your spouse is not intimate with you and it makes it harder to not cheat because of it? Now, now immediately the scripture comes to mind. I'm sure you probably know it as well, sis. Um, don't don't refuse your partner
Right.
without without mutual agreeing,
Right.
like that. So I mean, so that is, so scripture would, condemn us restricting ourselves from our partner. You
Right.
were going to say something,
Well,
sis?
I was gonna say it does tell us not to do that, but then it doesn't say, but if that happens, you can go ahead and find somebody else outside of the marriage. So it is a difficult situation. It is very difficult because that's not okay. Because God gave us He gave us sex in that context, in a marital context. For many reasons to stay connected. It's one of the ways that a husband and wife stay connected emotionally. And I'm sure you're very much so aware of that. So it's definitely a very challenging situation. And
Well,
it's not easy.
there might be some single people listening to us right now, and this is the reason why meaningful conversations are so important in that premarital period, where it's like you can get clear on, hey, are you deserving of this trust of me committing myself to you, because you will be responsible for my sexual experience. So will you help me with that? Because spouses are not supposed to be a problem to one another, or magnify the burden.
Right.
So Gran, that's a very unfortunate situation where a spouse is choosing not to be intimate.
Right.
That said, what would help? How can we help a situation like that? So obviously therapy can be helpful, but some of the things that you want to inquire is their need not being met? Is their need not being met? And so now they're turning around and they're not meeting the need.
Well,
So
yes.
what were
No,
you gonna
you're.
say?
No, you're.
What
I'm
were you,
sorry if I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry. I was just going to say that there's definitely when sex is being withheld in that way, and it's not for a physical issue. There's that is just the symptom. That's like when you have cancer and there's a you see a lump. That
diagnosis?
yeah, that's just like tells you that there's something much, much, much deeper underneath. And so definitely counseling is needed to figure out what
What's
is
the
caused.
deeper issue? What's
Yeah,
the
what's
deeper
the deeper
issue?
issue that's causing your spouse to want to withhold? Doesn't necessarily justify, what's going on. I mean, but it's definitely needs a deeper investigative look by a therapist that can
Right.
help you both.
So the typical dynamic, and obviously there's exceptions to every rule. Women often will choose intimacy in order to feel close.
Right.
Okay. And so feeling close will be their prerequisite. Hey, I want to feel close. And when they're satisfied as far as feeling close, then they're more interested in saying, okay, well, now let's be intimate. And so with men, they often are, kind of more in pursuit of the physical, and when they get the physical, then they're more comfortable being close, so to
Right.
speak, and everything in between. All right.
Right.
So now in this situation, the
And
spouse may choose to not want to be intimate because maybe they feel distant, and
mhm,
that's not being catered to. And so now they don't want to get physical, and of course now let's say it was a man, now they're not getting physical. Well, now they don't want to be close. And so you
Right.
see this kind of a dynamic where it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Mhm.
So just be aware of those kind of that's one example. That's one example. Never mind the issues where people don't feel their needs are being addressed, from
Mhm.
a, let's say, from an intimate standpoint. So it can be such a range of issues. And here's the sad part. People often don't feel it's worth, whether it's the financial investment or the time investment, to find a practitioner to help them solve these issues.
It is
Sadly,
worth it. It's worth it. It's cheaper than divorce.
uh, divorce can reduce your
Divor-
fortune in
eh,
half.
di-
Divorce. What else were you going to say,
I
sis?
was going to say it's cheaper than divorce. It
The emotional toll.
I was just going to say the trauma that divorce can cause on you as individuals and on your children. I mean, it's worth giving a try. Sometimes even through counseling, some marriages cannot be, not sometimes, but
Right.
there's, oftentimes that marriages still can't be saved. But um
Sometimes you could
you
go
want
to a sex therapist specifically at
right.
times,
No, there is. There are therapists.
that
Excuse
that
me.
that concentrate
Sex
on that
therapists. Yes, that is their specialty.
specialty.
Um
So, and you would be surprised at the range of, issues that they deal with. So the idea, just your relationship is worth your investment. If your car was broken, you would look for a mechanic. But for some reason, when our relationships are struggling, we just look at it. We just get
mhm,
paralyzed
mhm.
and just watch it disintegrate, and we're distracted by other cars,
Yeah.
rather
Right.
than fix your car, you
Yeah,
know.
fix your car.
Um,
And
how
I was just gonna say, going back to that, women wanna feel, safe and that they can trust a situation that helps them to be more vulnerable, in intimacy and emotionally. And then men wanna feel, respected and wanted and desired. And when they feel respected and wanted and desired, then they're in a happy space, as well.
Right, and it seems sometimes like culturally there's so many things distracting you
Mhm.
from giving those things.
Right.
So as men, a lot of times we miss the opportunity to verbalize that we value our spouse, touching our
Right.
spouses non-sexually, just to say we
That's
value,
important. Right, that's
um,
important.
making time. And Sister Tante, we talked about this before: real giving,
Real
not
giving,
giving
yes.
what we feel like giving, but giving what that person actually wants. Like
Right.
that's
E
real giving.
yes, even if
Um,
you don't like it or you don't, it's not about you, not what you want, but you're doing it
it's what
solely
they
because
want,
they want. Yeah, real
right?
giving. Mhm.
So real giving, and then I think from the woman's side, not realizing that your words matter greatly, and you verbalizing appreciation, you verbalizing meaningful validation, it goes a long way. And recognizing that even though you might not hit as hard physically, your words can be so profoundly impactful.
Mhm.
And understanding you can crush a person, so building your person up rather than crushing them, and that's for both men and women.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you saw how much time apart is healthy in a marriage. And so this is very, very individualized,
It
super,
is.
super individualized. There are couples that can tolerate a good chunk of time apart, and there are others that they don't do well with a chunk of time apart.
And
Go
I
ahead,
may
sis.
disagree a little. I mean,
Yeah,
not probably
go
not a
for it.
little. Well, I don't know if it's so individual personalized because I mean, true, there's situations and circumstances where couples do have to be apart and that, and they agree with Dr. White, they do okay. The general rule of thumb, I would, say if to do your best not to spend
All right.
masses amount of time apart, because you lose connection. You can't have, like, if you're not together, you can't have those sexual relations that, are needed for connection, like maybe on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, or whatever the case may be. And there's just, when you're not with your spouse, there
How do
could
you
just,
support that? Yeah.
well, emotionally, and there's just opportunities for your spouse to connect to someone else. I mean, just
Right.
because they're not spending that time with you. So, I mean, I know what you're saying, that there's situations where that can't be avoided, but if you can avoid it
Right.
because you need to see your spouse on a very regular basis. I've
I,
had
I
couples.
Go ahead. Go
I'm just
ahead.
saying, I've had couples that uh, they've just, throughout their marriage, like a 20-year-old marriage, that there's just been different times that they've just spent big gaps of time apart, and it's just they've never really been able to. It's caused a lot of problems. Let me just say that it's caused a lot of problems
Well said.
um, in the
Well said.
marriage. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I was, you find the anomaly couples where sometimes they actually have houses differently. I mean, like you get some of these strange kind of situations, and I'm gonna go with my sister, and I'm gonna say, in general, where that can be avoided, avoid that, and really learn how to make time together pleasurable. I would say learn. It's worth that
Yes.
investment because
Hmm.
sometimes you're just not good at time together being pleasurable, but that's a skill that you can hone.
Hmm.
Hey, I don't have to say the first thing that comes to mind. That was one of the skills I learned. Don't say the first thing or the second or the third. Think through what you're saying. So
Hmm.
some good questions coming through. How let's see.
Oh, which one are you reading?
How
No.
should a Christian approach dating?
Oh, oops.
I
I didn't.
love that question.
Okay, well, I didn't really mean to put that one up, but that's the one that's up. So we're gonna answer.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
how should a Christian approach dating? That's a fantastic question. So this is my personal, bias, and I think the dating period is a phenomenal time to
Mm,
learn one another in a non-sexual context. Okay,
yes.
I think it's a fantastic time because here's something I don't think a lot of couples or a lot of people think about. Um, Even after you marry, there will be a lot of times where you have to be non-sexual. Sometimes you have to travel. Sometimes there might be illness. But the bottom line is, at times you can have sex, and what you'll see is this early period, you literally were developing your skill sets in learning how to keep your relationship, respect boundaries. So during this period, you're able to set boundaries, you're able to respect boundaries, you're able to see what are wise decisions that you can make. And believe it or not, you're going to take that into your marriage, not necessarily with your spouse, but with other people. So that dating period is critical for developing that discipline. And when things haven't gone, sexual, you're going to have a higher degree of clarity in conversing and in hearing one another and in detecting red flags and responding to those red flags when you don't have the hue of dopamine and oxytocin, just drenching your brain, which is going to make it harder to make the decisions that you need to make. So with Christian dating, as you put it, you can do a much better assessment of how well do we complement one another going forward. Like, are we the right fit for one another? Are we going to be able to give ourselves the highest chances possible of merging our lives? Because that's no simple
Mhm.
task. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I did not, for the sake of time, because there's a lot of questions that are popping up. But no, that
Sure.
was no, I agree with you. Someone asked, on the topic of being unequally yoked, as a single Seventh-day Adventist, I find it hard to find single men in my age group in the church. Would it be ill advised to entertain someone outside of the church? Why are you smiling so big?
God, man, they coming with it.
I know they're coming with it. Um, yes, only because of the issues that it may cause later on down the road, meaning the practical issues and the stress that it may cause. Now, there are great people out there, and you're friends with them, and you're getting to know them, and they're interested in you, and they're interested in, hey, what religion are you? And you say, I'm Seventh Day Adventist, and they're like, hey, well, tell me more about that, and they authentically get interested, and they start studying the Bible, and they start to get convicted, and you decide, like, and they decide they want to keep the Sabbath too, and they're studying, they want to possibly join the church as well. I'm not against um dating evangelism, but I'm not saying that you purposely go out looking for that. Like, if that sincere person falls into into your life, I almost said your lap, but I don't let them fall into your lap, but just into your
That's a
life.
Freudian slip, sis. I'm just playing.
If they come into your life naturally, and they're a good person, right? You're looking at other characteristics besides just being like a 7 Day Adventist, because you can find a 7 Day Adventist who is 7 Day Adventist in name only, but is not really a nice person. So you can find a very nice person out there who is sincere, and if they're willing to like go to church with you, study with you, but that's also a difficult situation too, because sometimes people may just do that just to be
It's like
able to,
performative. It's like
yeah,
performative.
right, and they may just do that just because you're saying, hey, I won't marry outside of my church, and they're like, okay, I'll join then, but that's not sincere. So if somebody, that's something you have to pray about. That's
It's
something you have to
interesting
pray about.
because I have this workshop where I entitled it "Don't Say a Word." Don't say a word.
Mm.
Um, it's so important to not be as swayed by a person's words as much as their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we're talking about during dating, like kind of telling what you value, so on and so forth, sometimes there is some wisdom in, rather than you trying to conform your behavior to what I'm looking for, let me just see who you are.
Yeah, I like that.
Let
I
me
like
just
that.
see who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're no longer incentivized to perform, guess who you're going to be?
You're
Exactly who you
who
are.
you are. I love that. That's awesome.
Exactly who
That's
you are.
great.
So that's who I want to get acquainted to now. Who you are
Mm-hmm.
before there's incentive, before there's motivation. Because I tell you, when you're looking at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road,
Mm-hmm.
it's very likely you're going to get acquainted to who that person really is. So
Right.
let's just get acquainted to that person up front. And that comes from observation, not people talking and telling you one thing, because what you're going to see is the behavior is really what people are really about. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say um, I even a person claiming they're Adventist, no, I want to see
See.
who you are. I
Right.
want to see what you value.
Right.
And so yeah, but the thing has a 50% failure rate, so I want every advantage possible to succeed. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, spiritual congruence is an important issue. All
Mm-hmm.
right, let's see. If a spouse, here we go, supersonic. Supersonic, to ask such a juicy question, you should be showing your identity. You don't get to ask such a juicy question and then hide behind the symbol. You
And
you
all
should
these different names, people be putting these names, like, but that's okay. We don't have to know who you. If
anyway.
a
So
spouse
here we
has
go.
committed
If a
adultery.
spouse has committed adultery and confesses to you and have asked for forgiveness and is truly remorseful, finally, when do you forgive that spouse? And later, if I sleep with that person, is it a sin? Um,
No, you're talking about sleeping with your spouse. No,
right, that committed the adultery. So I don't believe so, because
no,
I don't think
biblically,
Christ
no.
said you have to divorce the person you're no
No,
longer.
actually, the Bible says, like, because of the hardness of our hearts, um, if we can't forgive or have a difficult time forgiving, then it's okay to divorce. But he was like, if you can forgive and you've forgiven, then that's fine.
Got it.
Not what they did is fine, but
Right, right.
God will
But if
give you
you
the
can
grace
forgive,
and strength to repair and restore your marriage. So no, it
uh,
is not sin.
okay. Let me see. What about companion? Let me put this one up here. What about companionable silence when together? Is this normal slash common?
Meaning you
Uh,
don't talk, you don't have communicate, you don't talk. I really don't really know exactly what they mean there. Is that I'm just assuming.
so now we just have to make something up based on what we
Well,
understand.
they could put a little bit more on that. They could put a little
Okay,
bit more on
and
that.
we come back to it
Companionable.
after they put. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe you could clarify. Are you saying that there is no communication whatsoever, and is no communication normal? Maybe you could come back, Mom Letty, and let us know.
because
Um,
silence is communicating. There's always communication, even when we don't talk. Our body language talks. There's always communication, even if we don't open our mouth. There's still communication. And
okay,
silence is communication. But if you're just, yeah, put more on that. I won't go anymore.
yeah. Okay, so if husband, all right, here we go. Ironi Bavano. If husband and wife both commit adulteries, what's the option? Can they still stay together after forgiving each other? What options do they have? I
If
think
you,
that yeah, I think if they can forgive each other, then you have a viable relationship. What if you married? So we'll go to this. What if you married before you joined the church? What if you married before you joined the church?
I,
Um,
I
you probably
think that she may be talking about um, unequally yoked. That's what I think.
okay.
And therefore, if I'm right, Marcia, um, you're not unequally yoked just because you became Adventist after you got married. Meaning, like you don't divorce that person because you join the Adventist church. You pray for them and ask God to work and
There's
the
a
Holy Spirit to work in their lives.
there's a scripture that like your faithfulness might convert the person, something to that effect.
Right, right, right.
I'm sorry, I don't have the scripture right now, but
I know. We're like we don't have our
yeah,
scriptures. We're not rattling off scriptures on the top of our head.
sorry.
Um,
Is it normal for a step parent to become jealous of their spouse's relationship with their own biological children and criticize them for being more of a friend than a parent?
um, that can happen. I won't say it's normal. I'd say it's unhealthy if the step parent becomes jealous over their spouse's relationship with their own biological children. That's unhealthy. Um, I don't know how else to say that. And I speak from a place total transparency. I am a step parent, even though I hate to say it because I'm really not, but technically I am, but I'm really not. I've raised my stepchildren since they were 2 and 3, and they don't even like it when I say that. And I don't like it either, but just for the sake of this question,
So
I'm saying that
technically speaking,
technically speaking, but heart wise and lovingly, no, no, I'm not a step parent at all. But with that said, it's not healthy, it's not normal. And that's, I mean, you asked if it's normal. Shouldn't say it's not normal. I mean, it happens, but it's not healthy and it's not right. And I would say, and I should have said this at the beginning, blended families would benefit, and we didn't do this because we didn't know to do this, but but you would benefit from getting family therapy as you're trying to bring the family together. And in family therapy, that is where the step parent that is feeling jealous of the relationship with the biological child, that you could bring that up and deal with that as a family. And the therapist could work uh, with the unit, with the system, to try to help blend this family better. So, but jealousy should never be there um, from the step parent towards towards your spouse and their biological children.
and what's interesting, Crystal, is that what a therapist is going to do is going to help break down and clarify what this jealousy is about. So we'll
Right.
use a word like jealousy, and when we get clarity on what's actually going on, it puts us in a position to now solve the issue, because we're calling it jealousy right now, but it might not even be jealousy. It might be concern. And so Therapy can help you put more accurate words on what exactly is happening, where it's coming from, and then position you to actually deal with it more effectively. So
Yeah.
just wanted to share that.
And it is that's we're 1 minute over time, but I think that was our last question for this evening. We appreciate you guys sharing your questions. You started to warm up and they started to fly in, which is great. And we didn't get to quite a few of them actually because we were trying to give each question its due. So I don't know what Dr. White thinks about this. We may do a part
Part
two.
two, part two,
Okay, we
and
will
then
do a
and
part
then
two.
so yeah, load up even more questions.
Yeah, load up more
Because
questions. Remember your questions and bring them. Matter of fact, you know what? They can put, well, remember your question and come back
and
next
bring
week.
it back and bring it back.
Yeah, bring
Yeah,
it back. Bring your question back. And we will, do our best to answer. But definitely share. You can share this link now again and say, hey, this was a program I just watched. This is, if you feel like some of the questions we answered would be beneficial to friends or loved ones that you know. And we will be back right here next week for Mental Health Monday at 7 p.m. Central. I don't know what time that is wherever you are, but we thank you guys for viewing and sending and or putting your questions in the chat. It definitely was a blessing to be able to try to answer as many as possible. So please, we will see you next week to answer more of your questions. Have a good evening.
have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Bye bye.